Do you remember the blended learning survey that I asked everyone to do about 4 weeks ago now? Remember that? It was online, and it was 75 Likert scales, I suppose, and some open-ended questions. Remember doing that? Yep. Okay, so what I want to do is show you with your own work how to actually get to the next step of the process. And in order to do that, I need to show you some files. I want to show you how to begin your results section. Now, if you read the guide, the PDF guide that I sent out by email, it's online as well. In the results section, it really consists of tables and graphs in that particular order, mainly tables, and explanations of those tables. Whenever you've got a survey, it's always a very good idea as your very first step to basically summarize the entire table using averages or means, and of course standard deviations. That is, what you do is you put all of your items into one table, not demographics, of course, because you're not measuring gender or age or anything like that, but all of the things that you're interested in. So all the scales, mainly scales, should go into the first table. And if you've got, let's say, 15 scales that you've used, you should actually see 15 scales listed down the first column of your first table in the results section. Okay. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll show you, if you remember, what the survey looked like. Okay. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Okay, so there is the very first. It's basically just a snapshot. Do you remember doing this? I started with what degree are you in, what's your gender, what's your age group, what's your current major, are you an international student, and how many units have you taken online? Okay. Now, the real part of the survey starts straight after the demographics. And so questions 7 to 20, I've actually just listed here. I haven't put any more in because it gets too unwieldy. Now, you actually did these, remember? And of course, you used these numbers to answer the questions, right? So that's just to jog your memory for the first 20 questions. But we had 75 questions. 75 is a lot, but it's doable. If I was to write this up, I should have those 75 questions up front as my first table. In this case, I'm just showing questions, I think 7 to 20. So what I do is this. I switch to, see, what I'm aiming to do is actually get to this particular screen here. Can you see that? Did that switch to Word? No. Okay, so let me just go back, stop share, share again. This time, share this one. Okay, so this is what the table would look like. And you can see that I've created what's called an APA table, and the first set of questions are all there for you, right? And this is what you would create in your own results if you were to write this particular survey up. Now, this is in exactly the right sort of format, except it's unordered. at this point in time. And as you can see, question 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 are there in front of you, right? And over on this side, you've got the mean and you've got the standard deviation. But how do you get the means and how do you get the standard deviations from the survey? That's the question. So what I want to do is show you how to do that. And then once you've actually found them and inserted the right numbers here, you can then start to order the order of these particular items so that the most important ones, or the highest means, are at the top and the lowest means are at the bottom. Highest means, of course, means the most agreement. Lowest means, of course, the most disagreement. And so both are important, and you can only find that out by actually calculating what the means are. Okay, so I want to show you how to do that. And if you had Excel open in front of you on another computer, you could actually do it too, but you obviously don't. So I'm going to stop the sharing here, and I'm going to go now to a different screen. This time I'm going to an Excel screen. Okay, so this is in fact the raw data for the first 20 people who answered the survey last year. Now, these are third years from 2017. None of you lot answered these questions. Okay, and this is what they look like. And all they are just the numbers. And I've just added person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down to 20. And this is how they answered all those questions. And what I've actually done is I've written in using red and blue, I've actually distinguished the computer usage from basically the teacher usage over this side here, you know, in terms of how do teachers communicate with me via email. So what I want to do is show you as quickly as I can, as easily as I can, how to actually calculate a mean and a standard deviation. All right, so this actually comes from the raw data. This is just a standard file. This is how the web actually recorded all those answers. So person 1, all those answers. Person 2, all those answers. Person 3, all those answers, all the way up to you know, the first 20 questions. Now, obviously, it's incomplete. I've left it a little bit blank because it's much more difficult to keep, you know, scrolling backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. So all you do is this, okay? Under this column here, this is one we're interested in because we're not really interested in year or gender or age or major or international or number of units. Well, here is this question here about computer usage being used for emailing assignments. And all you do is you pop the cursor in the place where you want the mean to go. All right. Is anyone good at using Excel here? Has anyone used it before? No. Okay. Well, here we go. So I'm just going to move this down a little bit, make it a bit easy to see. So once it's there, I think you go to formulas like that to bring up another menu. Then you go insert function. You click on the insert function on the left-hand side, like that, and then it brings up a box, dialog box. And can you see this word here, average? You just click average and you go OK. And then it says, what's the range that you're going to be using here? Can you see this here? Now, I don't like using this very much. I find this a bit of a pain. In fact, we're going from H4 to H23. And I'm going to do it here, actually on the spreadsheet. So it's H4 to H23, like that. Close the bracket, like that. Hit enter. And that's it. That's as simple as that. that's my mean or my average for that column placed into that particular cell. And you need to do that for every one of the Likert scales. So if I was to do that another 14 times, I'd end up with basically a whole stack of averages. And the average, of course, is the 20 students, the first 20 students, averaged out with all of their dissimilarities and variations rolled into one, as if it was one person. And that's the whole reason we use samples and populations and a whole stack of different people, because we can average out all of their differences and issues and all of their different opinions. Now, the second thing we need to do, and the cursor is in the right place, is to find the standard deviation. Now, the standard deviation is another statistic, and it tells you basically how big a variation there is in terms of the variance of responses from the mean. The bigger the number, obviously, the more variance, or the bigger the range of differences. The smaller the number, the more tightly knit the opinions are. So you can actually compare the means, not just in terms of their basic number itself. You can actually compare the means in terms of how polarized they are. That it means that would indicate, a big standard deviation would mean that there'd be some very high opinions and some very low opinions. Of course, when they're averaged out, it goes into the middle. That is, a high standard deviation means there's a bit of polarization. Some people are high, some people are low, and there's a big variance or a large standard deviation. So it's the same function. All you do is you go insert function. All right. This time we we slide down a little bit. All right. Here at the bottom is STDEV. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Now this time, can you see what happens here? It doesn't read it properly in this dialog box. So we actually have to know, we have to change the numbers here. So I'm going to change them. It goes H4 again, colon, 2 dots, H23, right? That gives us the range we're looking at. Close the bracket, enter. All right. Now, this is just a standard function of Excel. It's not very difficult to do, and there's heaps and heaps of videos online on how to do this, and this is going to be another one of them. I'm going to put this one up as well. Now, the number itself is huge because of all the decimal points. We don't want those decimal points because they're a bit of a pain and they get in the way. So I'm just going to relabel this mean over here, STDEV over here. And then I'm going to actually change these two rows. I'm going to right click. All right, I'm going to go Format Cells. And this brings up another dialog box. And click on Number. That is, all those cells I'm going to click on, they're going to be numbers. 2 decimal places is the default. And when I click on that, every row in every column, sorry, those 2 rows in every column has gone to 2 decimal places. So it just looks nicer and appears neater. So what I'm trying to say to you is you need to do this whenever you've got a survey. That is, you need to work out and determine the means and the standard deviations using Excel. Now, there's lots and lots of other ways of doing it, but this is the simplest way that I can explain to you right now. I actually don't use this very much because I tend to use a much more high-powered statistical program, which I've been using for many, many years. But without using that, you can still do it. Now, let me just show you something interesting, because I I'll just do this again for the next one. Okay. Now in this particular case, it goes. It's wrong, of course. It's row I. All right. So it's I 4 to I 23. That for the average, right? Now don't worry about the dialog box. That one's higher. So that's more important than this one because there's much more agreement with email questions as opposed to email assignments for the third year students. And whilst I'm at it, I might as well just finish the standard deviation. All right, so do the standard deviation here. Let me see. So it's I4 to I23. All right, does that look right? Close bracket. That's about right. Okay, so it's pretty simple to do once you get the hang of it. But now what we've got is 2 means and 2 standard deviations. The second mean is higher than the first mean, which means there's much more agreement because it's 5.6 out of 7 as opposed to 4.8 out of 7. And there's less variance. There's less standard deviation because the standard deviation is 1.54 as opposed to 2.65. So in fact, if you were to order all these questions, that question which is labeled email question should actually appear higher in the table. Do you understand? That is, you need to order your table according to how important the results are. But you also need to include the mean and the standard deviation. So what I've done is I've created these tables for you. Well, let's go back now to the previous table. All right, and in this particular case, I just made up some of these numbers, so they're not accurate at this point in time. However, what I want to show you is it is important that when you actually write the table for yourself, that the order of the means should be high to low, and the standard deviation should basically just go alongside it. So what this is actually doing is allowing you to prioritize the items in your questionnaire. It means that when it comes to the survey that you administered and are analysing, you've got results that are meaningful. You've now got an order by which you can say that, in this case, finding information about the unit content, it's got a mean of 6.84, for example, and a standard deviation of 1.2. That this is a really important one because that is more important than the one below it, which is 3.8. Can you see the difference? Can you see what's going on here? That by ordering the elements, you're analysing the data. And also, strangely enough, you can then use the high priority ones, the ones at the top, in this case, and I've split them between computer usage and teacher support. That is, teacher support gets its own kind of like little scale and high to low, and so does computer usage. You can actually start to look for other studies and other research which has also found similar results. That is, in terms of teacher support, the highest one there is 6.44. Remember, I just made these numbers up because I was trying to do this fairly fast. But 6.44 out of 7 is pretty high. Are there any other studies in the research literature which found that teachers actually do find the time to respond, that they respond quickly to student inquiries? It allows you a way of searching, again, going back to the literature and looking for important things, so you can pull that out of the literature and use it for support and use it to actually explain the table that you've actually created. Because you need to not just leave it here in your results. This is like the first table in your results. You need to the next step is to actually then talk about these numbers and talk about this order and talk about these items in an explanatory, not just descriptive, but an explanatory way. Like, why is it the case that, I mean, for example, why is it the case that finding information about unit content is more important than emailing assignments to my teacher? It's pretty obvious. No one emails assignments to their teachers because they put them in to turn it in, right? The days of emailing assignments to teachers are pretty much over. Occasionally you do it just for, you know, maybe just to check something, or in case you were late or you wanted to make sure you made the deadline. But let's face it, emailing assignments to a teacher or an instructor is a thing of the past. It might have happened 10 years ago, but it doesn't happen now. And that's why the mean there is 4.15, or basically no opinion. Can you see that? However, finding out information about unit content, you've got to use the computer because everything's online. Reading instructions prepared by the teacher, everything's online, 6.74. That makes sense, doesn't it? So you have to then talk about your survey, and if this was your survey, then you would have, or you could actually talk about each and every one of those items. You could bring up information, you could bring up other references about each and every one of those particular variables. I think there are 14 variables there. So that, in fact, is 14 paragraphs of explanation, description, citation, and support. Do you understand? I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to talk about every one of them, but you could if you wanted to. Like, there is no shortage of information and things to talk about. I know it seems a bit boring, but, you know, when you're talking about your own stuff, it certainly is not boring because you're engaged with it. Does that help a bit? Because this will be online for you to go back to. And as I said, there's any number of YouTube videos that show you how to find a mean or a standard deviation. But what you do with the mean or the standard deviation is this. That is, you have to create tables and you have to order those tables according to some sort of, you know, importance or significance. And you may as well just use high means to low means. That's what most people do. There are other statistics you can use. You can use the median, you can use the mode, but most people tend to use the mean. It does have a few problems, but again, most researchers use the mean most of the time. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that. Let me go back to, let me just get out of that.